Welcome to the Depth Realms channel. When someone walks into your life, it's not by chance. Have you ever met someone who entered your life out of nowhere? No warning, no invitation? No clear reason, and yet their presence made everything around you shift? They didn't arrive with fanfare or promises, yet something about them made time feel like it paused. The space around you seemed to soften, colors changed in a way you couldn't describe. And your heart, it trembled, quietly, deeply, as if someone had just touched the stillest part of you. Strangely, it may have been your first time meeting. Yet, it felt like you've known them forever. As if there's been a story written between you two, long ago, in a place beyond memory. Beyond logic, somewhere deep in your unconscious. Carl Jung, the brilliant psychologist, once said, "Encounters are never accidental." To him, every person we meet is like an invisible mirror, quietly reflecting back a part of ourselves. A part we haven't yet seen, or maybe one we've been denying. When someone moves you, it's a message from within. So, when someone shows up and stirs something in you, it's not just because they're special. It's because they awaken something in you that's been asleep. A voice that's been silent. A version of you waiting patiently to come back to life. Sometimes, it's a gaze that you can't look away from. Other times, it's a simple phrase that jolts your awareness. And sometimes, it's just their energy, their being. It feels like coming home to a place you've never been, but somehow recognize. These moments don't come from the mind. They come from somewhere deeper than emotions, from the subconscious. From a place where the soul speaks without using words. You might call it fate, or coincidence, or divine timing, but Jung had another name for it. Synchronicity, the mysterious meeting point between the inner world and the outer world. Synchronicity, when the inner and outer worlds collide. Synchronicity is when an external event that seemingly has no causal connection aligns perfectly with what's happening inside of you. It's not just a coincidence, it's a meaningful overlap. A moment when your inner world and the outer environment intersect, and from that point of contact, something shifts. Each of us walks around carrying parts of ourselves that remain unseen. Forgotten dreams, hidden pain, suppressed desires, shadows we've tried to leave behind. These pieces don't go away. They simply operate quietly beneath the surface of every relationship we enter. And then, when someone comes along at the right time, on the right frequency, they touch those hidden places. Not to stay forever, but to unlock a door you've long kept shut. Not here to stay, but here to reflect. The journey that begins after this kind of encounter, it's not about holding on to someone. It's not about learning how to keep them, or how to let them go. It's an invitation to look back at the people who've entered your life and ask, what did they show me about myself? Because people don't come to complete you. They come to mirror you, to reflect what you've forgotten, what you've denied, what's still waiting to be healed. Through that mirror, you remember who you are, what you've lost, and what light inside you still burns quietly, waiting to be reignited. That's when the real journey begins, the one that leads back to your true self. A simple request from us to you. If anything in this message resonates with you, if it touched something real inside you, helped you feel seen, or sparked an inner reflection, consider leaving a comment. I like this video. That one small gesture tells us that you're walking this path with us. It reminds us that what we're creating matters, and it helps us keep going to bring you more meaningful, soul-nourishing content. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling, and stay tuned for the next part of this journey with Beastmaster. Synchronicity, when someone appears, it's not random. Synchronicity, when someone appears, it's not random. Have you ever had a strange moment when someone entered your life unexpectedly, without warning, and something in you just shifted? It might have been someone you only passed by briefly, or a person you just met, yet they felt oddly familiar. Maybe it was a deep, intense connection you couldn't explain. Not with logic, not with reasoning. Most of us call this fate, or serendipity. But Carl Jung gave it a name that carries much more weight. Synchronicity. What is synchronicity really? Synchronicity isn't just a coincidence. It's not luck or random timing. It's when an event in the outside world, even if it seems completely disconnected, lines up with something deeply meaningful happening inside of you. It's when the external world and your internal world meet, at exactly the right moment. Like a mirror, held up to show you something you've been avoiding or forgetting, not with words, but with feeling, a deep, intuitive knowing. Let's say you're going through a rough patch, a time of confusion, disconnection, or transition. You're questioning your choices, your relationships, the direction of your life. Then, someone shows up. They don't give you direct answers. They don't try to fix anything. But somehow, their presence alone makes you start asking new questions. Not outward questions, but inner ones. That's synchronicity. It doesn't work through logic. It moves through resonance, through energetic alignment. It doesn't ask your permission. It just shows up when your soul is ready to see something. The soul recognizes before the mind understands. Carl Jung believed that your unconscious, the part of you that holds your memories, your fears, your shadow, is constantly trying to become conscious. And one of the ways it does that is through people. You may feel a powerful pull towards someone, not because they're your other half, but because they resonate with a frequency you've unconsciously sent out. Their presence awakens a memory, a wound, a desire, a version of you that's been locked away. This is why some of the most intense connections happen when you're on the edge of transformation. When something inside you is shifting, unraveling, or seeking light. At that moment, your unconscious begins sending out signals. Like a door quietly opening from within, waiting for someone to knock. And the other person? They're the knock. You can't plan for synchronicity. Here's the tricky part. You can't schedule it. You can't manifest it on demand. You can't force it by thinking positively or visualizing it on your vision board. Synchronicity isn't linear. It doesn't care about your calendar, your deadlines, or your relationship timeline. It shows up when your inner world is ripe, when something is ready to be seen. That's why you might meet someone at what seems like the worst possible time. And yet, deep down, it feels like the perfect time. Not right for your plans, but right for your soul. How do you know if it's synchronicity? This is the question most people ask. How do I know if it's just a random meeting, or if it means something deeper? Here's the answer. Your nervous system knows. When a synchronicity happens, you don't feel frantic. You don't feel like you have to grab onto the person or hold them tightly. You don't feel panicked about what comes next. Instead, there's a strange sense of peace. Even if everything feels unfamiliar, your body feels calm, as if something's being orchestrated beyond your control, not by you, but for you. You may not know where it's leading, but you know in that moment that you're meant to walk through it. The people who appear during these moments, they're not always meant to stay. They might only walk with you for a short distance, but even in that short time, they can open doors, shift your direction, illuminate things you had long forgotten. You don't chase synchronicity, you create space for it. The most beautiful thing about synchronicity is that it tends to happen when you're not trying. Not when you're forcing connections. Not when you're obsessing. Not when you're manipulating outcomes. It happens when you're still. When you're aware. When you stop trying to control everything and simply listen. That's when the soul speaks, through frequency, not logic. A gentle reminder from Jung. Carl Jung once said, "The person you are deeply drawn to isn't there to complete you. They're there to reflect back a part of you that's been waiting to be seen. You're not drawn to them because they're your perfect match. You're drawn to them because they stir something in you, a part you've kept locked away. It might be an old wound. It might be a childhood dream. It might be the soft, vulnerable version of you that the world taught you to hide. When you meet someone like that, it's not about romance or labels or destiny. It's about the invitation they bring. An invitation to see yourself more clearly. To return to a version of you that's been waiting, patiently, beneath the noise. Soul mirrors. Not soulmates. There's a common misunderstanding about the people who deeply move us. We often assume that when someone stirs something profound inside, it must be love. It must be fate. They must be the one. But what if they're not here to stay? What if they're not your soulmate, but your soul mirror? Carl Jung believed that every person we feel drawn to holds a piece of a deeper lesson, not to complete us, but to awaken us. And often, that awakening doesn't come gently. Sometimes it's sweet and luminous, but other times it's sharp, chaotic, soul-stirring in the way that breaks something open inside you. Not to harm you, but to show you a door you didn't even know existed. The real purpose of deep connections. These connections don't show up to fulfill your fantasies. They arrive to reflect your unconscious, the parts of you that haven't yet been integrated. It could be a wound you haven't healed, a dream you've abandoned, a feeling you've suppressed, a version of you you've stopped believing in. And when the timing is right, someone appears and, just by being who they are, they activate that dormant layer. It's not that they're magical. It's that they strike the exact frequency of something buried inside you. They match the shape of a silence within you that's been waiting to be named. That is the true power of synchronicity. It's not always about staying together. Here's something no one tells you. The people who bring the most transformation often don't stay. They're not meant to build a future with you. They're meant to shift your present, to show you something about yourself you've been unwilling or unable to see. They might be there to remind you of your softness, trigger your inner child, awaken a passion you've ignored, confront you with the truth you've been avoiding. And yes, it hurts sometimes, because transformation always costs something, usually comfort. But when you understand that this person wasn't here to save you, but to wake you, you'll stop asking, why did they leave? And start asking, what did they awaken in me before they did? That's where your healing begins. The mind labels, the soul recognizes. The mind wants certainty. It wants to label things. Are they the one? What is this connection? How do I make sense of what I'm feeling? But the soul doesn't need labels. It doesn't operate in categories or timelines. It knows, long before the mind catches up. That's why, when someone truly touches your soul, your thoughts may be confused, but your body feels calm. You feel safe, not because it makes logical sense, but because something in you has come home. That's how you know this is more than a crush, more than infatuation. It's a deeper call, a quieter wisdom rising. What if they're not meant to stay? This is the hardest part. Accepting that not everyone who awakens something in you is meant to walk beside you forever. Some are here for a chapter, some only a sentence, but every one of them leaves a mark, not in your story, but in your soul. The truth is, letting go doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. It means the lesson has been learned. The door they opened in you, you now have the key. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Those who stir your soul are not your destiny. They are your direction. They help bring your unconscious into the light. That's why it's okay to feel deeply and still let them go. How to hold these connections with grace. So how do you honor a connection that moved you without clinging or labeling or needing it to last? You hold it like this, with gratitude, not ownership, with reverence, not regret, with the knowing that this wasn't random, it was sacred. You understand that they didn't give you anything you didn't already have. They just helped you remember. And now, you carry that light forward. A soft closing thought. If you've ever felt a connection so deep it made you question reality. If you've ever met someone who felt like a mirror, a message, a memory wrapped in skin. You're not crazy. You're not making it up. And no, it wasn't just a coincidence. It was your unconscious becoming conscious. It was your soul saying, look here. This is what's ready to be seen. And now that you've seen it, the real work begins. Not in chasing them, not in recreating the feeling, but in integrating the part of yourself they woke up. That is the essence of synchronicity. Projection, when you meet yourself in someone else. There's a paradox in being human that Carl Jung understood deeply. Most of the time, we don't actually see other people clearly. We think we're observing them as they are, objective, rational, present. But what we're really seeing is ourselves, our past, our pain, our patterns, all projected outward, like a movie screen. Jung called this phenomenon projection. The process of unconsciously casting parts of yourself, your fears, your wounds, your desires onto someone else. It's not deliberate. It's not malicious. It's simply what the psyche does when certain parts of you haven't been fully seen, accepted, or integrated. The mirror you didn't expect. Have you ever felt irritated by someone? Not because they did anything objectively wrong, but because something about their presence just rubbed you the wrong way? Or maybe the opposite. You felt inexplicably drawn to someone, like they were living a part of you that you've never allowed yourself to be. That's projection. When you judge someone for being arrogant, it might be your own confidence that you've suppressed. When you dislike someone for being too emotional, maybe you've never let yourself cry. When you idealize someone and think they're the most inspiring human you've ever met, you might be projecting your own unlived potential onto them. The people we react to most intensely, either with admiration or discomfort, are often the clearest mirrors for what's happening inside of us. The hidden messages in emotional reactions. Projection happens in every type of relationship. Friends, family, coworkers, romantic partners, even strangers. You might feel a surge of resentment towards someone who doesn't try hard enough. But maybe it's because you're exhausted from always overperforming. You might feel overly responsible for someone else's emotions, not because they asked you to, but because a part of you believes your worth comes from being needed. And here's the thing. You won't always notice you're projecting because projection lives in the unconscious. It hides. It disguises itself as truth. It whispers, "They're the problem." But if you're brave enough to pause and ask, "What part of me is being reflected here?" Then suddenly, the relationship becomes a classroom. And the other person? A teacher, whether they know it or not. From trigger to teacher, it's easy to blame. To say, "They make me feel this way." But Jung invites us to ask something more powerful. What unhealed part of me is being activated right now? This isn't about excusing toxic behavior. It's about reclaiming your power. Because the moment you shift from reaction to reflection, you're no longer being controlled by your unconscious. You're starting to meet yourself in the mirror of another. For example, if someone's aloofness triggers your anxiety, maybe it's time to look at your fear of abandonment. If someone's warmth makes you cry, maybe it's because you've starved yourself of softness. If you feel unworthy around someone successful, perhaps it's your own disowned greatness asking to be acknowledged. You're not just reacting to them. You're reacting to the story they've awakened in you. Projection in love, the most potent mirror. Nowhere does projection show up more fiercely than in romantic relationships. You fall for someone, not just because of who they are, but because of what they represent. Safety, passion, freedom, validation, wholeness. And if you haven't fully met those qualities within yourself, you'll cling to them in the other person. You'll chase their presence like a fix. You'll try to make them your home, because you haven't built one inside yourself yet. It's not your fault. It's human. But it's also the beginning of pain, because no one can consistently live up to the ideal you've projected onto them. What happens when the projection breaks? Eventually, the person you put on a pedestal will reveal their humanness. They'll disappoint you, say the wrong thing, miss a moment that mattered. And when they do, the projection cracks. The fantasy dissolves. The light you cast on them dims. But here's the deeper truth. They didn't change. What changed is your awareness. You've stopped seeing your story and started seeing them. That moment, when projection turns into presence, is painful, but it's also liberating. Because now, you get to choose. Can I love this person as they are, not as I imagined them to be? And can I start retrieving the parts of myself I've scattered into others? Owning what you've projected. Healing from projection isn't about shame. It's about ownership. About calling back your energy. So ask yourself, who have I idealized and what quality of mind have I given them? Who have I resented and what fear are they reflecting? Who triggers me and what part of me is still waiting to be loved? When you reclaim what you've projected, you become whole. And when you become whole, relationships shift, not because others change, but because you see clearly. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And that understanding? That's the beginning of inner freedom. You can't stop projecting, but you can wake up to it. Projection is part of the psyche's design. You'll never fully stop doing it, but you can recognize it. You can soften it. You can grow from it. And once you do, the world becomes less about them and more about you returning to yourself. Every emotion becomes a compass. Every reaction, a reflection. Every encounter, a mirror, sometimes beautiful, sometimes uncomfortable, always revealing. Love, illusion, and the shadow not yet integrated. In the search for love, nothing confuses us more than our own feelings. We think we're in love. We believe we've found someone who completes us. We dive in, full of passion, full of hope, full of stories we've told ourselves about what love is supposed to feel like. And then, something unravels. It starts small, a misunderstanding, a subtle disappointment. Then it grows, unmet expectations, disconnection, doubt. Eventually, the love that once felt so right begins to feel unfamiliar, maybe even painful, and we ask ourselves, how could something that felt so beautiful now feel so wrong? The illusion of wholeness. Carl Jung suggested that much of what we call love isn't really love, it's projection. We don't fall in love with the person. We fall in love with the image they carry for us. With the feeling of safety, of being seen, of being finally chosen. Especially if we've carried wounds of rejection, abandonment, or inadequacy, we unconsciously look for someone to fix that, to fill that. But love, when driven by lack, quickly becomes dependency. It's not rooted in mutual presence, it's rooted in old pain. You're not really loving them. You're trying to heal yourself through them. When love is a mirror for your inner child. Imagine this. Deep inside you lives a version of yourself, young, tender, forgotten. This child remembers the pain of not being chosen, the ache of needing affection and not receiving it, the silence that followed your cries. And now, years later, you meet someone. They make you feel alive again, seen, important, loved. Your inner child rises in hope. Maybe this time I won't be left. But here's the truth. That person didn't promise to heal your childhood. They didn't agree to be your parent, your rescuer, your emotional anchor. And so, when they act human, when they fail to meet your unspoken expectations, it feels like abandonment all over again. Not because they hurt you, but because an unhealed version of you is looking for them to do something only you can do. You're not in love, you're in projection. This is hard to hear, but important. Sometimes, what you think is love is just your unhealed self trying to feel whole again. You're not attracted to them because they're your soulmate. You're attracted because they activate a familiar wound, a pattern. They embody something you've longed for and never received. That's not to say the connection isn't real. It is. But it's real in the way a mirror is real. They didn't cause your pain. They reflected it. And until you realize that, you'll keep choosing the same dynamic in a different disguise. The perfect person is a shadow story. Here's the catch. Even when we do fall for someone kind, stable, present, if we haven't integrated our shadows, we'll sabotage it. We'll find reasons to doubt them. Feel bored because there's no drama. Crave the highs and lows of a more intense love. Resist intimacy because it feels too vulnerable. Why? Because our nervous system is addicted to what's familiar, not what's healthy. If love in the past equaled chaos, withdrawal, or rejection, then peace might feel unnatural, unsafe. We say we want a good relationship, but our subconscious is still loyal to our wounds. The shadow in love. Jung taught that the shadow is the part of you you've rejected, denied, or disowned. It's not just your darkness, it's also your power, your creativity, your softness, your sensitivity. In love, the shadow can look like falling for someone emotionally unavailable because you haven't made your emotions feel valid. Chasing someone charismatic because you've denied your own magnetism. Feeling jealous because you haven't owned your desire. Idealizing someone's confidence because you've buried yours. You're not seeing them. You're seeing the parts of yourself you've lost. When the fantasy fades, eventually the illusion wears thin. You begin to see the person as they are, not who you hoped they'd be. This is the heartbreak most people don't talk about. Not the loss of the person, but the loss of the story you build around them. You mourn the version of you that felt whole when they were near. You grieve the fantasy of being saved. But here's the secret. That wholeness, that light, that feeling of being alive. It wasn't them. It was always you. They just helped you remember how to love without losing yourself. So how do you know if it's true love or just a beautiful projection? Check your inner state. Do you feel free? Or do you feel like you have to perform to be loved? Do you feel grounded? Or do you feel addicted to their attention? Do you feel safe being your full self? Or are you constantly afraid they'll leave? Real love allows you to breathe, to be messy, to be seen, without masks. You don't feel like you're chasing it. You feel like you've returned to it. True love begins with inner wholeness. You can't enter a healthy relationship from a place of lack. Not sustainably. Not honestly. You have to meet yourself first. Hold your inner child. Integrate your shadows. Stop expecting someone else to fix what only you can heal. When you do that, love becomes something entirely different. Not a rescue. Not a high. but a space where two whole people walk side by side, not to complete each other, but to witness each other. Seeing through the mirror, how to recognize and reclaim your projections. By now, you've probably realized something powerful. We don't just see others as they are. We see them through the lens of ourselves, through the filters of our wounds, fears, unmet needs, and unconscious longings. This is the essence of projection. The question is no longer if you project, because we all do. The question is, can I notice when I'm projecting and choose to take that part of myself back? Projection is natural, but awareness is transformational. Carl Jung didn't see projection as something bad or shameful. He saw it as a function of the psyche, a necessary step in the process of psychological growth. But here's the difference. Unconscious projection controls you. Conscious projection frees you. The more aware you become of what you're projecting onto others, the more agency you reclaim over your inner world and your relationships. Signs you might be projecting. So how can you tell when you're projecting? Here are a few clues. 1. Strong emotional reactions. If someone provokes a disproportionate response, extreme attraction, deep resentment, sudden anxiety, chances are it's not just about them. 2. Over-idealization. You think someone is perfect. They can do no wrong. You place them on a pedestal. This is often a sign you're projecting your own dormant qualities onto them. 3. Irrational judgments. You dislike someone, but can't explain why. Their behavior seems harmless, yet it stirs discomfort. Ask yourself, what do they represent that I'm unwilling to face within me? 4. Repetitive relationship patterns. You keep attracting the same type of people or situations, even when you try to change. Your subconscious is still trying to resolve an inner story through outer experiences. Turning the mirror inward. Once you suspect a projection is happening, the next step is inquiry. Instead of asking, why are they like that? Ask, why do I feel this way around them? What part of me are they reflecting? What story have I created about them? And where did that story begin? This is where healing begins. You're no longer outsourcing your emotional world. You're bringing it home. From reaction to reflection. Let's take an example. Say you're dating someone who doesn't text you back quickly. You spiral into anxiety. You feel unimportant, ignored, maybe even unloved. The unconscious response is to blame. They're inconsiderate. They don't care. But the conscious response is to pause and ask, why does this trigger me so much? When was the first time I felt unseen? What need am I expecting them to fulfill that I haven't acknowledged within myself? This isn't about dismissing your needs. It's about understanding where they come from and how much of them you're projecting outward. Projection versus intuition. One common confusion is between projection and intuition. Projection is reactive. It's tied to emotion, expectation, story. Intuition is calm. It speaks through stillness, clarity, and knowing. If you're feeling frantic, anxious, obsessed, or highly judgmental, that's likely projection. If you feel a quiet inner clarity, a sense of knowing without needing proof, that's more likely your intuition speaking. Being able to distinguish the two is key to living with emotional maturity. Reclaiming what you've given away. Every time you project a part of yourself onto someone else, good or bad, you give away your power. When you idolize someone's confidence, you forget your own. When you resent someone's freedom, you deny your desire to live fully. When you fear someone's rejection, you avoid your own abandonment wound. So what do? You call it back. You say, that confidence I admire, I have that too. That light I saw in them, it was always in me. That trigger, it's pointing me to a wound I'm now ready to heal. This is not just psychological work, it's spiritual. It's a return to wholeness. Why it's so hard, but so worth it. Here's the truth. Owning your projections isn't easy. It requires radical honesty, emotional maturity, a willingness to feel uncomfortable truths. It's easier to blame, to ghost, to fixate, to keep playing the same roles. But projection keeps you stuck. Reflection moves you forward. When you learn to sit with discomfort, to see yourself in the mirror others provide, you begin the most sacred work of all. The work of becoming your true self. The gift hidden in every trigger. Every person who triggers you is a doorway, not to conflict, but to clarity. They are showing you what you still haven't forgiven, what you still crave, what you've buried beneath shame, what you're afraid to express, what you're ready to reclaim. So don't just ask, why are they like this? Ask, what are they showing me about me? That question can change your entire life. Heartbreak is awakening when longing reflects the self you've forgotten. We tend to think of heartbreak as something to avoid, a sign that something has gone wrong, a failure, a mistake, a wound we wish had never happened. But what if heartbreak isn't a failure? What if it's a doorway, a moment where your soul says, this isn't about losing them, it's about meeting yourself again. Longing isn't always about the other person. When you long for someone, especially after they're gone, your mind tells you it's because they were special. They were the one, the missing piece, the person who made you feel alive. But often, what you miss is not them. It's how you felt when you were with them. The softness they drew out of you. The courage you accessed. The aliveness that came rushing to the surface. The version of yourself that you forgot existed. In that sense, you're not longing for them. You're longing for you. The you that got awakened in their presence. That's why heartbreak can feel so existential. You're not just grieving the relationship. You're grieving your connection to a part of yourself. The one who activated you was never yours to keep. Carl Jung once said, people meet when they are ready to see something in themselves. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to activate. They carry a frequency that resonates with your inner hunger. They stir something deep. They reflect a longing you didn't know you were carrying. And when they leave, it feels like that part of you goes with them. But here's the deeper truth. They didn't give you anything. They simply awakened what was already inside you. Heartbreak isn't the end, it's the reveal. So many people ask, why did I meet them if it wasn't meant to last? But from a soul perspective, that question misses the point. The real question is, what part of me did they help me remember? And how can I keep that part alive even without them? That's when heartbreak becomes a rite of passage, a portal to inner evolution, a chance to finally turn inward and ask, what within me have I abandoned that now wants to come home? The person was a messenger, not the message. When someone touches your soul, they carry a message, not in words, but in energy, in presence, in what they awaken in you. It might be a desire for depth, a need for softness, a hunger to be seen, a craving for spiritual connection. They don't arrive to fulfill it forever. They arrive to reveal it. They hand you the mirror and sometimes walk away. It's tempting to chase the mirror. But the real work is in holding what you saw. Why heartbreak hurts so much? Let's be honest. Heartbreak can feel like death. And in a way, it is the death of an illusion. The death of who you thought they were. The death of the story you were building in your mind. But beneath the grief is something more powerful, a rebirth. Because when someone leaves and the part of you they awaken remains, you realize that part was always mine. They didn't complete you. They reminded you of what you were always capable of. Longing is a compass. What if longing isn't a weakness? What if it's sacred? A signal, a compass, a vibration that points you to where your soul is calling you to grow. Longing says, there's something more I'm here to experience. There's a depth in me that's ready to be lived. There's a love in me that I've only scratched the surface of. Don't numb it. Don't rush to replace it. Sit with it. Listen. It has something to teach you. From heartbreak to wholeness. When you stop making heartbreak about what you lost and start making it about what you remembered, everything changes. You no longer need closure from them. You don't wait for apologies or explanations. You stop thinking they took something from you. Because you understand. What was awakened in you is yours to keep. What was reflected was always within. What broke open was only the shell, not the soul. And your job now is to build a new home for that version of you. One that doesn't depend on anyone else to be alive. Let the grief do its work. Let's be real. This isn't instant. Grief isn't linear. Awakening doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days, you'll feel empowered. Other days, hollow. That's okay. You're in the process of becoming. You're not just moving on. You're integrating. You're becoming the kind of person who no longer confuses awakening with attachment. The kind of person who can say, they showed me something sacred, and now I get to live from that place even without them. That's not heartbreak. That's evolution. When you crave intensity but resist safety, Have you ever found yourself irresistibly drawn to someone who felt like a storm? Someone whose presence was electric, unpredictable, thrilling, maybe even dangerous? And yet, when you met someone kind, someone steady, warm, emotionally safe, you felt bored? Like your heart didn't spark? Like something was missing? If so, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. There's a reason many of us chase intensity, but fear intimacy. A reason we crave connection, but feel uneasy when love gets quiet, calm, and consistent. And that reason lives in the unconscious. What feels familiar isn't always what feels good. Carl Jung believed that what we don't resolve in the unconscious will repeat in our external reality, again and again, until it's healed. And for many of us, chaos is familiar. If love in childhood was unpredictable, you learned to equate inconsistency with care. If attention came only when you were in crisis, you learned to associate drama with intimacy. If you had to earn affection through performance or perfection, quiet love might feel unsafe. So when someone shows up offering calm, steady affection, your system doesn't recognize it as love. Instead, it whispers, "This feels boring. Where's the passion? Something's off." But what's actually off is your inner compass, still calibrated to trauma, not truth. Trauma bonds versus soul bonds. Let's be clear. Not every intense connection is meaningful. Not every can't stop thinking about them is spiritual. Sometimes, it's just your nervous system clinging to what's familiar, not what's healthy. That powerful magnetic pull, that emotional high and crash, that addictive cycle of closeness and distance, those might not be signs of a soulmate. They might be signs of a trauma bond. A trauma bond is a deep attachment to someone who reflects and often reinforces your earliest emotional wounds. It's not love. It's repetition. Why we mistake intensity for love. The human mind is story-driven. It wants meaning. It wants to label experiences. So when someone makes your heart race and your body ache with longing, your brain says, this must be something special. But what you're feeling isn't always about them. It's often about what they awaken. They mirror your unmet need for attention, your fear of abandonment, your longing to be seen, chosen, adored. And when they pull away, your wound reopens, making you chase, perform, and overgive just to feel enough again. Not because they're the one, but because your pain wants resolution. Safety can feel like boredom until you heal. Here's the hard truth. If you haven't healed your relationship with yourself, safety can feel like disconnection. When someone sees you clearly, when they offer stability instead of chaos, when they don't trigger your wounds, you might feel restless, doubtful, uninterested, not because they're wrong for you, but because your nervous system is used to survival mode, and peace feels foreign. This is where many people self-sabotage. They say, I just didn't feel a spark. We didn't have chemistry. They were too nice. But often, this spark you're used to is actually your trauma being reactivated, not your heart opening. Recalibrating your inner compass. Healing doesn't mean you stop feeling passion. It means your passion stops being rooted in pain. You begin to crave consistency over chaos, depth over drama, presence over performance, safety over survival. And when you meet someone who brings you peace instead of adrenaline, you don't push them away. You recognize them as home. But to get there, you have to decondition the pattern. You have to learn that calm isn't boring. Available isn't unattractive. Kindness isn't a weakness. Love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Healing the part that's addicted to the chase. So what do you do if you've always been pulled toward intensity? You don't shame yourself. You get curious. You ask, what does emotional chaos give me that calm love doesn't? Where did I first learn that love equals inconsistency? What would it mean to feel safe in love, and can I allow that? This is where the real healing begins, not in blaming the people who hurt you, but in rebuilding the part of you that's afraid of being loved gently. Love doesn't have to be loud to be true. Hollywood teaches us that love should be explosive. Books tell us it should be all-consuming. Social media shows us the highlight reels, the drama, the ecstasy, the obsession. But real love is soft, quiet, consistent, steady. It grows in presence, not performance. It deepens in silence, not just in conversation. It doesn't burn you alive, it warms you, slowly, over time. From addiction to devotion. When you stop seeking emotional highs. When you start choosing partners who don't match your chaos. But you're calm. You move from addiction to devotion. You begin to love not for validation, but for expansion. Not for rescue, but for resonance. You don't need them to fix you, chase you, or save you. You simply say, I've done the work to meet myself, and now I'm ready to be met by someone who does the same. Twin flames, soulmates. And the myth of the one. There's a story we've been told since childhood. That somewhere out there, there's one person who will complete us. The one who will understand our soul, ignite our passion, hold our hand through every shadow, and never leave. We call them soulmates, or twin flames, or the one. And when we meet someone who makes our heart race, who awakens something deep, primal, and inexplicable, we think, this must be it. But here's what Carl Jung might ask. What part of yourself have you projected onto this person? And what myth are you unconsciously trying to live out? The power and danger of the twin flame narrative. The idea of a twin flame, someone who is the other half of your soul, split across lifetimes, is seductive. It explains the intensity. It makes the chaos feel meaningful. It justifies the pain as part of the journey. But here's the problem. The myth may be beautiful, but the attachment can become destructive. People stay in toxic dynamics because they believe, this is my twin flame. I'm supposed to suffer until we reunite. We fight, but that's just part of the karmic bond. It hurts this much because the connection is so deep. But often, that pain isn't spiritual. It's psychological. It's a trauma bond dressed in cosmic clothing. What Jung would say about the one. Jung didn't believe in someone completing you. He believed that wholeness comes from within. He wrote about the anima, the unconscious feminine within men, and the animus, the unconscious masculine within women, and how we project these inner figures onto people we're attracted to. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. So when you meet someone and think, they're everything I've been missing, ask, what part of my psyche are they carrying for me? What inner quality have I disowned that I'm now seeing in them? Because often, what you fall in love with is a reflection of yourself. The mirror, not the Messiah. The people we feel drawn to, especially intensely, aren't necessarily soulmates. They're mirrors. They reflect our unlived potential, our unhealed wounds, our hidden desires, our forgotten truths. They show us what we crave, and what we fear, and what we haven't dared to become. That's why it feels so powerful, so consuming, so destined. But that doesn't mean they're meant to stay. Sometimes, their only role is to hold the mirror and let you see yourself clearly, maybe for the first time. The trap of idealization. When we believe someone is the one, we tend to ignore red flags, tolerate mistreatment, abandon our boundaries, sacrifice ourselves for the sake of the connection. Because we don't see them, we see the story we've projected onto them. And the deeper that story is rooted in your unconscious, the more tightly you'll cling to it. But here's the truth. No one is meant to rescue you. No one is meant to carry the weight of your unlived life. That's your journey. When you let go of the one, you open to real love. Letting go of the idea that someone is your twin flame or your destined partner isn't cynical. It's liberating. Because it allows you to see people for who they really are. Love without attachment. Stay without losing yourself. Leave without feeling like you've failed destiny. When you stop asking, are they the one? And start asking, what am I learning about myself through this? You move from illusion to integration. From fantasy to freedom. Love without projection. Imagine this. You meet someone. You feel drawn to them. Not because you think they'll complete you, but because you've done the work to complete yourself. You're not pulled by addiction. You're not pushed by trauma. You're simply met in clarity, in calm, in shared presence. There's space. There's honesty. There's mutual evolution. That's not a twin flame. That's a soul companion. Someone who walks beside you, not because of fate, but because you both chose growth. You are the one you've been waiting for. The most sacred love story isn't about finding someone else. It's about finally turning inward and saying, I no longer need someone to carry my light, because I've learned how to hold it myself. Then, and only then, are you ready to meet someone from a place of wholeness. Not to save, not to be saved, but to share truthfully, vulnerably, and without illusion. Rewriting the myth. Jung believed that myths weren't just stories, they were archetypes. Symbols of deep inner processes. So if you resonate with the idea of soulmates or twin flames, don't reject it. But ask, what part of me wants to be reunited with something lost? What power have I disowned and projected onto someone else? Can I let love guide me deeper into myself, not farther away? Because the real union you're searching for isn't external. It's the reunion of all the parts of you that have been waiting to come home. Real spiritual connection, beyond fantasy, into conscious love, in a world saturated with romance novels, soul contract videos, and twin flame theories. It's easy to confuse spiritual connection with emotional fireworks. We think that if a connection is spiritual, it must be intense, instant, irresistible, destined. But Carl Jung taught us something radically different. Real connection isn't found in the intensity of a feeling. It's found in the awareness it brings. Because the truth is, the soul doesn't need drama to recognize what is real. How to recognize a conscious connection? Here's the paradox. The most spiritually aligned connections often feel calm. Not boring, not dull, but grounded. They feel safe, but not stagnant. Deep, but not destabilizing. Familiar, but not codependent. Freeing, but still deeply intimate. There's no need to constantly prove, perform, or pursue. Instead, you arrive, as you are, and you're met there. That's spiritual maturity. Signs of a conscious connection. Here are some subtle but powerful signs you're in a truly spiritual, not fantasy-driven, bond. 1. You grow in self-awareness through them, not obsession. They reflect back your patterns, but without judgment. They help you grow, not shrink. 2. You feel safe, not addicted. Your nervous system rests in their presence. You don't feel like you're chasing a high. 3. There's mutual healing. Not one person saving the other, but two people walking toward wholeness together. 4. You feel inspired to be more of yourself. Not a version they want. Not a version you pretend to be. Just you. 5. You're not afraid of stillness. The quiet moments are full, not empty. You don't fear silence, because you're connected in something deeper than words. From fantasy to awareness. So how do you tell the difference between fantasy connection and real spiritual connection? Fantasy says, they complete me. I can't live without them. It's fate, even if it hurts. Awareness says, I feel whole beside them. We challenge each other with love. We are choosing each other, consciously. Fantasy creates dependency. Awareness nurtures interdependence. Love isn't meant to rescue you. So many people say, they healed me. But what Jung might suggest is, they created a container where I could choose to heal myself. A conscious connection isn't about rescuing or fixing. It's about witnessing. It's someone sitting beside you while you feel what you've avoided. It's someone reflecting your strength when you doubt yourself. It's someone saying, I won't carry this for you, but I won't leave you to carry it alone. That's sacred. That's spiritual. Connection is a mirror, not a medication. Real love doesn't numb you. It wakes you. It holds up a mirror, gently but truthfully, and says, here you are, all of you, and I'm still here. Sometimes, that reflection is uncomfortable. It reveals your insecurities, your protective walls, your hidden wounds. But instead of withdrawing, a conscious partner stays curious. They don't take your shadow personally. They invite you to meet it together. What spiritual connection feels like in the body? If you want to know whether a connection is truly nourishing, ask your body. Do you feel tension or softness in your chest around them? Do you breathe deeper or shallower in their presence? Does your gut feel tight with uncertainty or relaxed in safety? The body always knows. It speaks before the mind understands. True connection isn't about adrenaline. It's about coherence, a feeling of inner and outer alignment. It's not about longevity, it's about presence. Some conscious connections last a lifetime, some only a season. But the depth of a connection isn't measured in years. It's measured in how much truth, tenderness, and transformation it brings forward. There are people you may only walk with for a short while, but their presence rearranges something in you forever. That's spiritual. That's enough. The purpose of meeting soul-aligned people. You don't meet soul-aligned people to escape yourself. You meet them to return to yourself. They show you what love feels like when it's not rooted in fear. What safety feels like when it doesn't require performance. What truth feels like when it's not punished. They don't pull you away from your path. They walk beside you on it. And sometimes, the most sacred act of love is to say, whether we walk forward together or not, I'm grateful for what we've awakened in each other. Letting go, when love means saying goodbye with grace. Letting go, two words that hold more weight than they seem to carry. Because when you've loved deeply, when someone has touched your soul, awakened your inner world, walked through your shadows with you, the idea of release feels unbearable. You might ask, if the connection was real, why did it end? If I still love them, why should I let go? But Carl Jung would offer a softer, wiser question. What part of me is growing through this ending? Because letting go isn't always about moving on. Sometimes, it's about moving inward. Not every connection is meant to stay. There's a truth that few of us are taught, and even fewer want to accept. Some of the most sacred, soul-deep connections in your life will not last forever. Not because they weren't important, not because they weren't meant to be, but because they served their purpose. They awakened something. They opened a door. They gave you a glimpse of your light, or your shadow. And once that purpose is fulfilled, their role in your journey naturally ends. Love is not ownership. We've been conditioned to believe that if love is real, it should last. That permanence is proof that if someone leaves, it means they never truly loved you. But that's not love. That's possession. Real love doesn't say, you belong to me. You can't go. You owe me forever. Real love says, I see you. I honor you. I release you with gratitude. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you love them enough not to force something that's no longer aligned. The inner work of release. Letting go is not an external act. It's an inner permission. It's telling yourself, I don't need closure to create peace. I don't need them to understand me to understand myself. I can carry the love without clinging to the person. You don't erase the memories. You don't pretend they meant nothing. You simply loosen the grip and breathe again. When holding on hurts more than letting go, there's a moment in every attachment journey when the love you feel begins to turn inward. You realize you're not chasing them anymore. You're chasing the version of you that existed when you were with them. You're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of losing the hope they represented. You're not longing for the past. You're longing for what it awakened in you. And once you see that, the grief becomes sacred. Not something to suppress, but something to honor. Because in the letting go, you make space. For truth. For breath. For something new. The myth of needing closure. So many people wait. Wait for the apology. Wait for the explanation. Wait for the message that never comes. But Carl Jung might ask, what if the closure you're waiting for is the understanding you can give yourself? You don't need them to close the chapter. You are the author. You get to choose when the story shifts and how the next page is written. Letting go isn't cold. It's conscious. Letting go doesn't mean you shut your heart. It means you open it wider to include truth, boundaries, and your own emotional well-being. It's not saying, I don't care. I never loved you. You didn't matter. It's saying, I can love you and still walk away. I can cherish what we shared without needing to hold on to it. I can release you and still feel full. That's not detachment. That's emotional maturity. When letting go becomes a spiritual practice, letting go, when done from a place of inner alignment, becomes sacred. It becomes a prayer of return to self, a release of fantasy, a reconnection with presence, a quiet honoring of the season that has passed. You stop seeing the ending as failure and start seeing it as completion. You begin to trust that the soul knows how to close doors, gently, without slamming, without blame. You learn to say, thank you for the chapter. I will carry the lesson, not the longing. How to let go practically and spiritually. Here's what letting go might look like in your daily life. You stop checking their social media. You unfollow, not in resentment, but in respect for your peace. You pause when the mind replays memories and say, yes, that happened. And it's over. You cry when needed. You journal what you wish you could say. You begin to fill your own space with new rituals, new presence, new ways of loving yourself. You don't rush healing, but you stop resisting it. Letting go is a portal. Every time you release someone who no longer fits your becoming, you step through a portal into deeper self-trust, into quieter strength, into the truth that you are never really alone, not when you are anchored in your own heart. So grieve, feel, remember, bless, and then gently whisper to yourself, I release this not because I stopped loving, but because I've started loving myself enough to let go. Choosing peace over intensity, the quiet revolution of real love. Most of us were raised to believe that love should be loud, that it should knock the wind out of you, steal your breath, make your heart race, keep you up at night wondering. We were taught to associate intensity with truth. And anything calm, steady, predictable, that must be boring. It must mean there's no chemistry, no spark. But Carl Jung might gently say, what you think is love might actually be the part of you that's still addicted to emotional chaos. Why intensity feels like love, but isn't. When you've lived through abandonment, inconsistency, or emotional neglect, the nervous system learns to associate unpredictability with intimacy. That adrenaline rush you feel, that ache in your chest, that magnetic pull towards someone emotionally unavailable, it's not always love. Sometimes it's survival. You're not drawn to them because they're right for you. You're drawn to them because your body remembers someone else who wasn't. And now, chaos feels like home. Peace feels unfamiliar when you've known only storms. It's not that you're broken. It's that your compass was set in childhood, by the way love first felt. If love meant being ignored unless you performed, then you chase people who are hard to reach. If love meant walking on eggshells, then peace feels uncomfortable. If love meant highs and lows, then steady affection feels suspicious. So when someone shows up with gentle, consistent care, you don't trust it. You tell yourself, there's no spark. I'm not excited. Something's missing. But what's missing is the trauma you've mistaken for love. The shift from chaos to calm. Healing begins when you stop asking, do they make me feel butterflies? And start asking, do I feel safe in their presence? Can I breathe around them? Can I be all of me without fear of rejection? True love doesn't flood your system with anxiety. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't make you question your worth. It brings your body into regulation. It feels like a long, steady exhale. Real love isn't boring. It's safe. The world has romanticized the chase. But Jung would remind us, what you run toward or away from often tells you what still lives in your unconscious. If peace feels boring, that's your work. Because boredom is often a mask for discomfort with intimacy. When you're not constantly scanning for danger, your system doesn't know what to do. You think, I should feel something more. But the truth is, you're finally feeling stillness. Learning to crave peace over passion. It takes time. To unlearn the addiction to emotional highs. To rewire your brain and body to recognize calm as safe. You won't feel that spark right away because there's no panic attached. But give it time. Because what you're learning to feel is deeper than attraction. It's resonance. It's not just chemistry, it's coherence. Not just desire, but devotion. Signs you're ready for peaceful love. You'll know you're healing when you no longer chase people who make you feel not enough. You value emotional consistency more than mystery. You communicate instead of test. You feel safe being vulnerable, even when it's me. SSY. You don't need love to feel like a roller coaster to believe it's real. You begin to choose people who show up, apologize when they're wrong, love without conditions, stay through silence, meet your needs before you have to beg for them. That's not boring. That's revolutionary. Trusting love that doesn't burn you. Let go of the idea that love needs to sweep you off your feet. Real love grounds you. It puts your feet on the ground. It doesn't feel like you're falling. It feels like you're arriving. You don't feel consumed. You feel held. And that stillness, that quiet knowing, that's what love feels like when it no longer comes from a wound. This is the love you've been waiting for. Not the one that makes you chase, shrink, or question yourself, but the one that says, you don't have to perform here. You don't have to heal alone. You don't have to earn this love. You are already worthy of it. That love won't scream to be noticed. It will whisper to your nervous system. You're finally safe. And the more you choose peace over chaos, presence over performance, stillness over sparks, the more your heart remembers its true rhythm. How to be alone without feeling lonely, the healing power of solitude. There's a silence that hurts, and a silence that heals. Most people are afraid of being alone, not because solitude is inherently painful, but because of what they're forced to feel when no one else is there to distract them. You've probably felt it too. The ache in your chest when the phone doesn't ring. The fear that maybe no one will choose you again. The echo of old stories. I'm not lovable. I'm forgettable. I'm too much. But Carl Jung would remind us, loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. In other words, loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of deep connection. And sometimes, the first connection we must restore is the one with ourselves. Being alone versus feeling lonely. Let's get clear. Loneliness is a craving, a hunger for contact, understanding, resonance. Solitude is a container, a sacred space where you meet yourself, without distraction or distortion. Loneliness says, I'm empty without someone else. Solitude says, I'm full and my own presence is enough. The difference isn't external, it's internal awareness. Why being alone feels so hard? If you've spent most of your life tying your worth to relationships, then being alone can feel unbearable. You might ask, who am I without someone to love? What's the point if no one sees me? Does this still matter if no one is here to witness it? But here's the truth. If your value is only reflected back to you through others, you'll always be chasing mirrors. Solitude teaches you to stop chasing, to sit, to listen, to relearn your own soul's voice. Solitude as a portal to wholeness. Jung taught that the journey to individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires time alone. Not as punishment, not as exile, but as initiation. When you allow solitude, you hear what's beneath the noise, discover needs that were buried beneath survival, reclaim parts of yourself you gave away to be loved, grieve what you lost, and celebrate what still lives in you. Solitude is where you remember that you are not just a reflection. You are a source. Signs you're healing through solitude. You'll know you're beginning to heal when you stop reaching for your phone the moment silence enters the room. You enjoy meals without needing distraction. You find peace in slow mornings, long walks, and journaling. You laugh out loud even when no one else is around. You cry, and instead of numbing it, you stay. You're not lonely. You're learning to belong to yourself. The sacred rituals of being with yourself. Being alone doesn't have to feel empty. When approached consciously, it becomes a practice. Try this. Light a candle before bed. Just for yourself. Speak out loud to your inner child. Let them know they're safe now. Write letters to the version of you who kept going, even when no one was cheering. Make art, not to impress, but to express. Sit in nature and feel the quiet affirmation that you are part of something larger. These aren't just habits. They are acts of devotion. You are not waiting. You are becoming. Society tells you that being alone is a waiting room. Waiting for love. Waiting for someone to choose you. Waiting for the next big thing. But solitude isn't a pause. It's a passage. You're not waiting. You're weaving. You're building the foundation of a self that no longer depends on being seen to feel real. So the next time someone does come along, you don't give them your identity. You share your presence. When you can be alone, you love differently. Here's the most beautiful truth. When you stop fearing your own company, you stop settling for anyone who treats you like an afterthought. You no longer date to fill a void. You no longer beg to be chosen. You no longer confuse attention with affection. You love from fullness, not from need. And that kind of love is quiet, rooted, and powerful. What if you're never alone again? Look around you. Look within. You are surrounded by breath, earth, memory, spirit, the 1,000 versions of you that carried you here. What if you're not alone, but finally with yourself? What if the silence is not absence, but arrival? Closing thought. You were never meant to live in constant company. You were meant to learn the rhythm of your own being, to love your own presence, to trust your own voice. And when you do, loneliness becomes rare. Not because you're never alone, but because you become your own beloved. How to love without attachment, holding without clinging. At some point in your journey, you may ask, can I love someone and still be free? Can I be close without becoming consumed? Can I care deeply without clinging in fear? The answer is yes, but it requires a different kind of love, one rooted not in need, but in consciousness. Carl Jung believed that when we haven't yet met our deeper selves, we look for completion in others. We don't fall in love with the person, we fall into a projection. We grab onto them, not because of who they are, but because of who we hope they'll be for us. This is attachment, love driven by fear, dependency, and illusion. But what if love could be something else entirely? The difference between love and attachment. Attachment says, I need you to feel whole. Don't leave me or I'll fall apart. My identity depends on your presence. Love without attachment says, I choose you, but I don't need you to be okay. You add joy to my life, but you're not my foundation. I can honor your path, even if it doesn't include me forever. It's not cold. It's not avoidant. It's clear, calm, rooted. Why we cling and how to heal it. Clinging doesn't mean you're weak. It means a part of you is afraid, often for a good reason. Maybe you were abandoned as a child. Maybe love always came with conditions. Maybe you learned that connection was fragile, and if you didn't hold on tight, it would disappear. Clinging is the nervous system saying, I don't feel safe alone. If they leave, I lose my sense of self. But here's the healing. The more you know who you are, the less you grip what isn't meant to stay. Loving with open hands. Imagine love like holding a bird. If you squeeze it too tightly, you suffocate it. If you hold it too loosely, it might fly away before it's ready. But if you hold it gently with presence, not pressure, it may choose to stay. Not because it has to, but because it wants to. That's what it means to love with open hands. You offer presence, not possession. You share space, not control. You walk beside each other, not on top of each other's wounds. Love without ownership. Real love does not say, you're mine. You owe me your time. You can't grow without me. Real love says, you are your own person, and I will not clip your wings to soothe my insecurity. It means letting your partner evolve, letting them explore, letting them be, even if that means moments of distance or change. This isn't indifference. It's reverence. Signs you're learning to love without attachment. You'll notice the shift when you don't panic when they need space. You trust the connection without constant reassurance. You stop overanalyzing texts or timelines. You can be fully present without fearing the future. You feel more curious than controlling. You realize, my love is not a leash. It's a light. And that light shines whether they're near or far. From clinging to commitment, choosing someone consciously is different than needing them compulsively. Clinging is fueled by fear. I don't want to be alone. Commitment is fueled by clarity. I want to build with you, not out of need, but desire. When you stop clinging, commitment becomes sacred, not suffocating. You stay because you want to, not because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. How Jung might frame this? Jung would say that loving without attachment means integrating the other into your awareness, not losing yourself in them. You don't project your anima or animus onto them. You don't assign them the role of savior. You see them as there, not as your missing piece. This is where love becomes real, not fantasy, not rescue, but soul-to-soul recognition, without illusion. The paradox, letting go to let love in. Here's the paradox of love. The more you try to grip it, the more it slips away. The more you release it, gently, consciously, the more it has space to breathe, to grow, to return. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop owning. You stop loving from fear and start loving from freedom. You are already whole. You are not missing half. You are not a puzzle piece. You are not incomplete without them. When you remember this, love becomes expansive, not restrictive. You don't love to get something. You love to give something sacred, presence, truth, joy. And when two whole people choose each other, not out of lack, but overflow, that's when love becomes a sanctuary, not a struggle. Triggers in love. When conflict becomes a mirror for your healing. You meet someone. You feel connected, safe, seen. And then, it happens. A small comment, a missed call, a strange look. Something shifts inside you. Suddenly, your chest tightens. Your heart races. You feel rejected. Not enough. Afraid they'll leave. You say, "Why did that hurt so much? Why do I feel so reactive? Why can't I just let this go?" Here's why. You weren't just reacting to them. You were responding to something older, something deeper. Carl Jung would say, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What a trigger actually is. A trigger is not caused by the other person. It's caused by an unhealed part of you being activated. It's your nervous system remembering something painful, often without your conscious awareness. That pain might sound like, I'm being abandoned again. I'm not good enough. I'm invisible. I'm being criticized like I was as a child. The current moment becomes a portal, a doorway into a wound that's asking to be seen. Relationships are mirrors, not medicine. Your partner is not responsible for healing your past, but they will reflect where you haven't yet healed. They will touch the raw places you've hidden, mirror the parent you never pleased, reflect the fear you buried under perfection, trigger the grief you never processed. This is not because they're wrong for you. It's because your soul wants integration, not avoidance. Jung called this shadow work, facing the parts of you you've repressed or disowned. In relationships, they bring those parts right to the surface. Triggered? Good. That means you're ready. It might sound strange, but being triggered is a sign of readiness. It means the wound is no longer buried. It's here, asking to be felt, held, and released. But instead of blaming your partner, try asking, what is this moment teaching me about myself? Where have I felt this before? What belief is being activated? And is it even true? What does the younger me need right now? These questions turn reactivity into revelation. Conflict is a spiritual classroom. Most people avoid conflict because they're afraid it will lead to disconnection. But in conscious relationships, conflict becomes transformational. Not because it's easy, but because it's revealing. You learn how you defend instead of listen, how you shut down when afraid, how you project instead of express, how you seek control when you feel powerless. Conflict doesn't create these patterns. It exposes them so they can be healed. The 3 levels of a trigger. 1. The surface. What happened in the moment? A text was ignored. A tone felt off. A behavior stung. 2. The story. What you made it mean. They don't love me. I'm too much. I'm not worth it. 3. The root. What it's really connected to. A childhood wound. A past betrayal. A shame you never voiced. Most of us live in the story. But healing happens when you gently trace the thread back to the root and offer that place compassion. What conscious relationships actually look like. In a conscious relationship, triggers are not used as weapons, but as invitations. Conflict is not a battlefield, but a mirror. Partners don't take things personally. They get curious. The goal isn't to win. It's to understand. You say things like, when you said that, I felt small and I know that's an old wound of mine. I'm not blaming you, but something in me shut down, and I want to explore why. I don't want to react from fear. I want to respond from awareness. This is the soul of relational maturity. When it's not your partner, it's your past. Sometimes your partner doesn't do anything wrong. They just activate something unfinished inside you. You think you're mad at them, but you're actually mad at the past version of you who wasn't protected, seen, or loved the way they needed. That part still lives inside you. And when triggered, it says, please don't abandon me again. Your work is to say, I see you. I'm here. I'm listening now. And that inner recognition, that's where the healing happens. You can't avoid triggers, but you can transform them. You can't eliminate all conflict. You can't avoid ever feeling activated. And you shouldn't. Because every trigger is a breadcrumb, leading you back to wholeness. What matters isn't whether you're triggered. What matters is how you respond when you are. You can lash out, or you can lean in. You can shut down, or you can slow down. You can turn the moment into a wall, or into a window. Final thought. The people who trigger you most often are not here to break you, but to wake you, to call forward the parts of you that are ready to be seen, loved, and reintegrated. So the next time you feel the fire rising in your chest, take a breath, step back, look inward, and ask, what part of me is surfacing and how can I meet it with compassion? That's not weakness. That's evolution. Masculine and feminine energies in love, polarity, safety, and sacred union. In every human being, regardless of gender, there lives both masculine and feminine energy. Carl Jung called these energies animus, the inner masculine within the feminine psyche. Anima, the inner feminine within the masculine psyche. Together, they form a symbolic inner union, a dance of polarity that influences how we love, communicate, create, and connect. And when these energies are unconscious, unbalanced, or in conflict, our relationships reflect that imbalance. But when they are integrated, love becomes a space of deep presence, emotional safety, and sacred reciprocity. What are these energies, really? Let's define them beyond stereotypes. Feminine energy is receptive, intuitive, expressive, emotional, flowing, creative, magnetic, connected to cycles and depth. Masculine energy is focused, structured, protective, directional, grounded, decisive, present, anchored in stillness. Both are beautiful. Both are essential. Neither is superior, but the imbalance of either creates disharmony. The dance of polarity in relationships. Polarity is the magnetic tension between opposites, like the north and south poles of a magnet. In love, polarity creates chemistry, desire, dynamic balance, the interplay of giving and receiving, safety and expansion. When one partner leads from embodied masculine energy, grounded, clear, and present, and the other leads from embodied feminine energy, open, receptive, expressive, there is flow. This doesn't mean assigning roles by gender. It means each person knows how to access and honor both energies within themselves and in their partner. When the energies are unconscious, when the masculine is distorted, it becomes controlling, emotionally unavailable, overly logical, rigid, detached from feeling. When the feminine is wounded, it becomes overly emotional, chaotic, passive-aggressive, needy, lost in fantasy. These shadows often attract each other, creating dysfunctional loops. For example, the avoidant masculine and the anxious feminine, the emotionally distant partner and the overly expressive partner, the rigid planner and the emotional dreamer. Jung would say, these patterns are projections of our own unintegrated archetypes. Integration. Inner union before outer harmony. You cannot sustain a healthy polarity with another until you've honored both energies within yourself. For example, a woman who only lives in her masculine, hyper-independent, always achieving, may struggle to receive love. A man who's disconnected from his inner feminine may suppress emotion, reject vulnerability, and fear intimacy. But once these energies are integrated, something sacred happens. You no longer seek completion in your partner. You seek resonance. Two people both whole in themselves. Choosing to dance in polarity, not because they must, but because they can. What healthy masculine energy feels like in a partner. It feels like grounded presence, safety without control, clarity without rigidity, holding space when emotions rise, steadiness in the face of chaos, integrity and direction. In this energy, you feel, I can be all of me here. I don't need to hide. What healthy feminine energy feels like in a partner. It feels like emotional openness, intuition and trust, vulnerability without collapse, playfulness and creativity, expressive softness, flow that invites depth. In this energy, you feel, I am inspired. I am moved. I am seen. The sacred role reversal. Polarity is dynamic, not fixed. Sometimes, the feminine will lead and the masculine will soften. Sometimes, roles will shift in different seasons or moments. This is not a script, it's a symphony. The key is consciousness. Are you aware of how you're showing up? Are you honoring your own energy or abandoning it? Are you responding to your partner or reacting from old wounds? That awareness is the gateway to sacred union. How to begin balancing these energies within. For the feminine within you, journal your feelings. Uncensored. Dance without choreography. Rest without guilt. Express without apologizing. Receive love without pushing it away. For the masculine within you, create structure and follow through. Sit in silence and breathe deeply. Hold yourself accountable with compassion. Make decisions from clarity, not urgency. Be present fully, without distraction. When you cultivate both, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying, but because you're whole. Love rooted in polarity, not power struggle. The healthiest relationships are not about who leads. They're about how you meet each other in truth. You don't need to dominate or submit. You don't need to chase or be chased. You co-create a space where the feminine flows freely because it feels safe. The masculine holds gently because it trusts the depth. Both energies nourish, inspire, and awaken one another. That's not just romance. That's a sacred union. Intuition, synchronicity, and the quiet knowing of the soul. Sometimes, something just clicks. You meet someone, and the air feels charged. The conversation flows like you've known them forever. Time bends. Your heart softens before your mind understands why. And later, when you reflect, you wonder, how did I know? Why did it feel like destiny? Why them? Why now? Carl Jung would call this synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that align in ways logic alone can't explain. And beneath it all lives a quieter force. Intuition, the soul's language, subtle and sacred. Intuition is not a fantasy, it's a faculty. Most of us were raised to trust logic, evidence, and reason. We were taught that knowing comes from facts. But intuition doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't need proof. It whispers. Pay attention. Something here matters. This moment is not random. You feel it in your body before you can name it. You sense it in someone's energy before you know their story. It's not delusion, it's resonance. Jung and the mystery of synchronicity. Jung defined synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence of two or more events where something other than probability is at play. In love, synchronicity might look like thinking of someone just before they call, meeting a stranger who says the exact words you needed to hear, repeating signs and symbols that guide you toward or away from a connection, feeling a sense of fatedness without knowing why. These are not accidents. They are invitations. From life. From the unconscious. From something deeper than logic. How to know if it's intuition or fear? One of the hardest things to discern is this a gut feeling or is this anxiety? Here's a simple way to tell. Intuition is quiet, grounded, and clear. It doesn't rush you. It recenters you. Fear is loud, tight, and urgent. It demands action or avoidance. Intuition feels like a deep breath, a clear yes or a gentle no, a soft something isn't right, even when everything looks perfect, or a quiet this is safe, even when you're unsure why. Fear narrows. Intuition expands. Love is an energetic language. We often focus on words, but the deepest truths in love are communicated non-verbally. It's in the pauses, the tone, the eye contact, the space between words. You can meet someone and know, before anything is said, that something significant is here. That's not fantasy. That's energetic intelligence. Your nervous system is always reading. Your intuition is always listening. And sometimes, love arrives as a frequency, not a formula. When life speaks in symbols, pay attention to recurring dreams, unexplained feelings, signs that show up when you're thinking of someone, songs that play at just the right moment, numbers, animals, places that carry personal meaning. These may seem small, but in Jungian psychology, the symbol is sacred. It bridges the conscious and the unconscious. It carries meaning beyond explanation. Don't dismiss the signs. Let them guide you, not blindly, but intuitively. Intuition in relationships, the subtle red flags and green lights. Sometimes intuition tells you, this person is kind, but they're not aligned. This looks great on paper, but it feels off. I don't know why I feel safe here, but I do. The mind may resist, but the body knows. Trust the way someone's energy makes you feel. Do you shrink or expand? Do you second guess or soften? Do you perform or arrive? These are truths logic can't always explain, but your soul remembers. The role of inner stillness. You cannot hear intuition in chaos. You must create space to receive it. That means silence, solitude, slowing down, asking with sincerity, what do I feel beneath what I think? When you return to stillness, the noise clears. And in that space, your knowing returns. Jung called this active imagination, a practice of listening to the unconscious through images, feelings, and symbols. Modern intuition is the same, a returning to inner clarity. Let love be a conversation with the unseen. You are not meant to navigate love by checklists alone. You are meant to feel your way through. Let your inner compass lead. Let synchronicities affirm your path. Let your soul, not just your story, guide your choices. Because love is not just about compatibility. It's about alignment. And alignment lives in the unseen, in energy, in timing, in the subtle yes you feel before the mind agrees. Final thought. You are more intuitive than you realize. More guided than you know. More connected than you've been taught to believe. When you trust that, you no longer force love. You follow it. You no longer chase answers. You listen to what already lives within you. That's not irrational. That's ancient wisdom arising again. Wholeness. When love no longer asks you to abandon yourself. At the beginning of your journey, love may have felt like a search for someone to complete you, to fix what was broken, to prove you were enough. You gave. You performed. You waited. You chased. You molded yourself into shapes that didn't feel true. Just to be chosen. Just to not be left behind. Just to feel worthy of staying. But slowly, the search changes. The more you return to yourself, the more you listen to the quiet voice beneath the noise, the more you realize you were never missing anything. You were always whole. Wholeness is not perfection. Let's be clear. Wholeness doesn't mean you've healed every wound. It doesn't mean you've transcended all emotion. It doesn't mean you never feel lonely or afraid. Wholeness means you are no longer looking outside yourself for permission to be. You are rooted in who you are, even when love comes, even when it leaves. You are no longer available for relationships that require you to abandon your truth. You can hold your own inner child, your shadow, your power, without needing someone else to carry it for you. That is wholeness. Carl Jung and the journey to the self. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beneath conditioning, wounds, and roles. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And love, real love, is not the end of that journey. It's the mirror that reflects your progress. When you meet love again, as a whole person, you don't say, 'Fix me. Choose me so I can matter. Stay so I can feel real.' You say, 'I know who I am, and I will not lose myself to keep you.' How you know you're whole in love. You'll feel the shift when you're no longer anxious when someone pulls away, because you no longer chase your worth in their closeness. You don't overgive to earn love. You give from overflow. You don't beg to be seen. You see yourself so clearly, you'll never again tolerate blindness. You don't cling when someone leaves. You grieve, then breathe, then stand. You are soft, but not collapsible. You are open, but no longer leaking. You are loving, but also deeply discerning. Love no longer looks like a rescue. You used to wait for someone to save you. Now, you're not looking for a lifeboat. You've become the shore. Love is no longer your identity. It is an expression, not a substitute for your sense of self. You're not afraid to be alone. You're not afraid to speak your truth. You're not afraid to walk away when something beautiful becomes self-betrayal. You've become the kind of person who will never again abandon themselves in the name of love. And that changes everything. When you are whole, love feels different. It's calmer, quieter, richer. You don't need constant validation because your self-worth is rooted. You don't project a fantasy. You connect with a person. You don't fall in love hoping to be healed. You walk beside someone because you've already begun healing yourself. You love, not because you're starving, but because you have something beautiful to share. You are the home you were searching for. The search is over. Not because love has ended, but because you have arrived. Home is no longer in someone else's arms. It's in your own body, your breath, your boundaries, your voice, your softness, your strength. You don't need to find the one to feel whole. You are the one for yourself. And now, you're ready. Ready to love without losing. Ready to stay without shrinking. Ready to walk away when needed, without collapse. This is not the end of your love story. This is the beginning of the one that's finally true. Final words. Wholeness doesn't mean you'll never ache again, but it means your ache will no longer come from self-abandonment. It will come from living open, loving bravely, choosing presence even when it's vulnerable. You are no longer searching. You are creating. You are becoming. And whatever love you meet next, or return to, will rise to meet this version of you. Rooted, radiant, whole. And that is sacred.